Well, good evening, everyone. My name is Varun Soni, and I'm the Dean of Religious Life here at the University of Southern California. Thank you all so much for attending our very special event this evening, the installation ceremony for USC's 9/11 Memorial. I now ask that everyone rise as they are able, in body and spirit, for the presentation of colors by the USC Air Force, Army, Naval, ROTC Color Guard, and the singing of the national anthem by USC student Malia Savets.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say, does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
It is my great honor to welcome you today on behalf of the many sponsors, departments, committees, and groups that have come together to make this installation ceremony possible. In particular, I am very grateful to the September 11th Families Association, the Fire Department of New York, the City of Los Angeles Board of Public Works, the Los Angeles Police Department, the Office of the President, the Office of the Provost, the Department of Public Safety, Facilities Management Services, the Political Students Association, the Undergraduate Student Government, USC Spectrum, USC Athletics, the Public Arts Committee, and the Office of Religious Life. Today we remember 9/11 even though we have never forgotten it. For our students, 9/11 marked an end of innocence, a time when a world filled with magic and miracle was transformed overnight into one of anguish and despair. Indeed, all of our lives dramatically changed during those dark days, and we will all carry those powerful images and overwhelming emotions with us throughout our lives. Today we gather as a university community to remember the thousands of innocent victims who died in the horrific attacks 13 years ago in rural Pennsylvania, Washington, D.C., and New York City. Today we pay tribute to the first responders, the firefighters, police officers, and medics who were killed in the courageous and selfless service of others. Today we honor the heroes of United Flight 93 who sacrificed their own lives for the security and well-being of our country. And today we pray for those who lost their loved ones on 9/11, the parents, siblings, children, spouses, and friends who have suffered immeasurably since then. At this time, I now ask that everyone rise again as you are able to observe a moment of silence to honor the memory of those we lost on 9/11. 9/11 was an American tragedy and also a global tragedy. More than 90 countries were represented in the deaths at the World Trade Center. And in the 13 years since 9/11, other nations have also been victimized by devastating terrorist attacks. Norway and Spain, England and Indonesia, India and Pakistan, Iraq and Syria, and so many others. So today we mourn together as a global Trojan family, a family that represents virtually every state in our country, every nation in our world, and every religion on our planet. As a way of remembering 9/11 and honoring its heroes and victims, we come together now to install this memorial here at the University of Southern California. This act of installation is also a rite of consecration, as our very presence here today makes this space sacred for our university community. But today we do more than just dedicate this memorial. As Abraham Lincoln famously said at Gettysburg, our great task is to dedicate ourselves to create a more perfect union, a more perfect world. So let us affirm that this moment of remembrance is also a call for action, engagement, and reconciliation. Let us acknowledge that our university community is an inspiring example of how the world can work together creatively and collaboratively across disciplines and domains in order to achieve our common goals and shared aspirations. Let us realize that our faith traditions should be part of the solution to the world's great crises and not part of the problem. And let us all say together, amen. And now it gives me great pleasure to introduce the person who is responsible for this memorial, USC undergraduate student Jennifer Massey. Yes. Simply put, without Jennifer, this ceremony would not be happening today, and this memorial would not be here now. Over the last 18 months, Jennifer has worked tirelessly to make all of this happen, and we're all so grateful for her perseverance, her vision, and her courage. Please join me in welcoming Jennifer Massey.
Thank you all for coming. I was in New York City on September 11th, 2001. And like many other Americans, I will never forget that day. I was in New York City for work, and in the morning, we were supposed to meet at the World Trade Center in order to carpool to the photography studio in Brooklyn. My plan was to take the A train just to Chambers Street, which was the World Trade Center stop, and meet the crew at 9 a.m. My roommate had asked me, "Can you wait for me for a couple of minutes while I brush my teeth so we can leave together?" I said, of course, and sat down to wait. While I waited, I'd turn on the television, which I never did in the mornings. And as I was watching, I discovered that the first tower was hit. At that point, no one knew what was happening. And as I tried to wrap my head around what had happened on such a gorgeous blue sky day, I watched live as the South Tower was hit. At that point, we all knew we were under attack, and we decided not to leave the apartment. I immediately thought about my family at that point, because there was no way for them to reach us because all of the cell phone towers were down. So I ventured out, and I stood in the payphone line with about 50 other people. And as I was in line, I saw droves of people walking from downtown to uptown. They were all bewildered and covered in soot. And I realized that I was extremely lucky that day, and my story, my personal story, pales in comparison to the other situations people experienced that day. The following days after the attack were surreal, and they were difficult to describe. I witnessed people coming together, it felt like they were coming together as a nation. While walking to and from the subway in New York City, I saw people crying. But I also saw some people chanting USA. The smell in the air post 9/11, it was a combination of smoke and chemicals of which I never smelled before or since. Through the haze and confusion, which lasted for days, If one were watching closely, you'd see strangers who may have only seen each other on the way to and from work. They were embracing. They were realizing that they were still here. And at the same time, they were crying together for other stranger acquaintances that were lost. You know, it's interesting how routine brings people in your life that you may never come to know. Sorry, it must be allergies. Strangers on a train that you may have shared a smile with or given a quick hello to. However, these strangers become part of our life's tapestry. They have their own families, religious beliefs, traditions, while vastly different from each other. One thing remained the same. No matter your color or creed, we were all affected by that horrific day. As the years have passed, I've done a lot of healing, though I've never forgotten that day. Living in Los Angeles and being on campus, I couldn't help but feel a sense of detachment from 9/11 altogether, partly because it had happened so far away. I began having discussions with other students here at USC and discovered that the events of 9/11 were important and very real to them as well. This tragedy didn't only happen to Americans. It happened to us as a global family. USC enrolls more international students than any other US university, and utilizing that knowledge as empowerment, I took action and asked the university if we can have a memorial on campus. I articulated my lofty plan, which was to acquire a piece of the World Trade Center steel. From its inception, the university was behind the project 100%, which made me extremely happy. This has been a 1.5 year long labor of love. No blood, but definitely tears and sweat throughout the process of our memorial coming to fruition. There are several heroes, amazing individuals without whom none of this would be possible. Lee Ielpi enabled USC to obtain the piece of steel. Mr. Ielpi has been a firefighter for over 50 years, and he lost his son, firefighter Jonathan Ielpi, that fateful day. Mr. Ielpi founded the September 11th Families Association, and this group offers peer support and was quite active in the media relations surrounding the future of Ground Zero's redevelopment. In 2006, Lee and his colleagues proudly headed up the creation of the Tribute Center at Ground Zero, which offers walking tours of the World Trade Center site and also serves as a museum with artifacts from Ground Zero that helps to educate visitors from all over the world about 9/11. Mr. Ielpi then urged me to write a letter to the fire commissioner of the New York City Fire Department, Salvatore J. Cassano, requesting the actual piece of steel. Dr. Varun Soni comprised the letter on behalf of USC, officially meeting specific requirements so that we would be granted the opportunity to house this 9/11 relic, which the first responders obtained. Dr. Soni has worked tirelessly on this memorial, and I cannot thank him enough. And whether he likes it or not, he is my friend forever. The centerpiece of the memorial is the top of an I-beam recovered from the South Tower. It is with my great honor and pleasure that I present the University of Southern California's 9/11 Memorial. The plaque reads, "In honor and remembrance of the heroes and victims of September 11th, 2001, let us never forget those who fell and those who carry on." Last November, when George W. Bush was at USC, he pointed out that in 5 years, the students wouldn't have even been born yet when 9/11 happened. He was concerned that the students would forget the significance of that day. This monument to honor the victims and first responders will ensure that that never happens. Please allow this memorial to serve as a reminder not only of the lives that were lost that day, but so too that America must stay vigilant against terrorism and that the duty of the first responders never ends. Thank you.
Good evening and welcome to the University of Southern California. I'm John Thomas. I'm the Chief of the Department of Public Safety, and it is with great honor and privilege and just sacrificial duty as a member of the law enforcement family that I get to look at this every day and think of the heroism and all of the sacrifices that were made on that day. Before we begin, let me take you back to the evening of September 11th, 2001, when then President George W. Bush made the following statement to the American people following the events earlier that day at the World Trade Center. And I quote, "A great people have been moved to defend a great nation. Terrorist attacks can shake the foundations of the biggest buildings, but they cannot touch the foundation of America." Thank you. He went on to say, "These acts shatter steel, but they cannot dent the steel of the American resolve." These words and my words, any words that I say henceforth, will seem insignificant tools to express the enormous sense of honor and gratitude that comes with being a part of this ceremonial unveiling of one of but a few places in this city where there's a permanent memorial memento from the World Trade Center, from the tragic events that occurred 13 years ago today in the city of New York. And despite this memorial memento being a reminder of one of the most tragic dates in American history, it will also stand for generations to come on this campus as a reminder and tribute to the nearly 3,000 innocent American lives that were lost that day. But it will also stand as a tribute and a memorial marker for the valiant and brave lives that were sacrificed by over 400 first responders. And it was but through their efforts that many more lives were not lost that day. We, the University of Southern California, the City of Los Angeles, and especially those of us that serve the campus community as first responders, and I'll acknowledge my own department, the University of Southern California Department of Public Safety, the USC Office of Fire Safety and Emergency Planning, our partners, Los Angeles Fire Department Station 15, and LAPD Southwest Division as the first responders, and any other representatives that I might have been amiss in mentioning that also serve this community as fire and public and police service representatives here in this campus community. But I also want to thank, because truly none of this would have been possible had it been not for the efforts of Jennifer Massey, whose efforts and outreach to the 9/11 Families Association and the Fire Department of New York City, and along with Dean Varun Soni from the university's Department of Religious Life, who are responsible for this new addition to the campus community. So please, once again, join me in giving Jennifer Massey and Dr. Soni another round of applause and thanks. It's my hope that just as on that fateful day, beginning at 8:46 a.m., September 11, 2001, when the first plane was flown into the North Tower, and those first responders, whether they were on duty or off, headed into danger with little regard for their own personal safety, and many of them fully being aware that as they entered those towers, that they probably would not come out again, nor would they ever see their families. The only thing that mattered to them was that that bell rang in the fire station and that call went out to the first responders, public safety, and police personnel. And truly, this is the spirit of American public service, be it fire service or police service. It is our hope that this memento stand as a constant reminder to the community, this community, of the day in and day out commitment of its first responders, and that we carry on that legacy, and that we also live up to the bravery and heroism of those men and women that gave their lives that day. So to the thousands of innocent American citizens that lost their lives, and others from other places in the world that were also innocent, we pay tribute this day, and we honor the memory of the 343 firefighters from the Fire Department of New York, the 23 New York Police Department officers, the 37 Port Authority officers, the 15 paramedics, and the more than 2,000 first responders that were injured that day and continue to bear the physical and psychological scars of that day and their families that they must live with forever. So the significance of having something as powerful and as spiritual as that memento on this campus is something that we should all not take for granted. And again, very, very thankful and grateful that it is a part of the university community. So in the indomitable American and Trojan spirit, we shall never forget your sacrifices, and may this memorial memento be a constant reminder for generations to come. Thank you very much.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Kevin James. I'm the president of the Board of Public Works in the office of Mayor Eric Garcetti here in the city of Los Angeles. Every one of us remembers where we were when we first heard the news of an airplane crashing into the North Tower of the World Trade Center in New York City 13 years ago today. We all remember how we first heard the news, or who woke us up to tell us to turn on our television. We instantly started thinking of friends in New York City, whether they lived in New York or were visiting New York, and we began to wonder. For the members of the September 11th Families Association, who we honor here this evening, their wonder turned into panic. And then they began the terrifying process of trying to reach their loved ones, only to realize with the passage of every hour that the chances of seeing their family members again were slipping away. Many of us saw on live television numerous firefighters without hesitation running into burning buildings. Certainly they knew the chances were real that they might never walk out of those buildings. All of our lives changed that day. But none of our lives changed quite like the family members of those lost on September 11th, 2001. Innocent people that happened to be present at the World Trade Center, the Pentagon, or on board any one of 4 standard, everyday, previously safe commercial airliners. None of our lives changed quite like the surviving members of the Fire Department of New York and their families, including the families of those brave first responders that died that day. This steel beam, donated to this university, to our city, and our community by the September 11th Families Association and the Fire Department of New York, for us to remember all of them. It will stand as a reminder that freedom comes at a heavy price, that life can unexpectedly and suddenly take a tragic turn, that we are all dependent upon others for our own safety and for the safety of our families, and that first responders risk their own lives every day to ensure that we live in a safe environment. I've been to several September 11th memorials around the city today, and I've heard many important stories. I want to take a couple of moments to share 3 of them with you. The story of New York City Fire Battalion Chief Joseph Pfeiffer and his younger brother Kevin, written about in New York Newsday on November 18th, 2001. On September 11th, Joseph Pfeiffer ran into his younger brother Kevin amid the chaos at the foot of the World Trade Center. It was a welcome surprise for the brothers, both New York City firefighters who lived 6 blocks apart in Middle Village, but rarely saw each other on the job. Joseph, chief of the 1st Battalion in Lower Manhattan, had raced to the scene when he saw the first jet hit the North Tower. He was setting up an operations base in front of the towers when he saw his younger brother Kevin, a lieutenant at Engine Company 33, who came in response to the second alarm. "We spoke a few words," Joseph said, "but time was short." Exchanging concerned looks, they strode into the North Tower and got to work. Kevin headed up the stairs to the 70th floor, while Joseph directed maneuvers in the lobby. Shortly afterward, the South Tower collapsed, plunging the area into darkness. Following orders to evacuate, Kevin gathered his company and began the long trek down from the 70th floor. Joseph believes his brother was near the 40th floor at the time of the collapse. Somewhere around the 10th floor, he realized he had to switch to another stair, Kevin did, said Joseph, because the rubble from the first tower blocked the way out. A team of firefighters from Engine Company 7 who ran into Kevin on their way down the same set of stairs said that Kevin told them the right way to get out. Kevin kept his company together, and he made sure the other firefighters had a way out, said Joseph, who was standing in front of the tower when it fell, engulfing him in a cloud of dust and debris. Engine 7 made it out 30 seconds before the North Tower collapsed. His younger brother, Kevin, did not. The story of Fire Department of New York Lieutenant Paul Goodell, who along with his 3 sons, all served as New York City firefighters. Paul's son, Gary, from Fire Department Rescue Company 1, lost his life on September 11th. And Paul and his 2 other sons, Ralph and Michael, and by the way, Michael is still assigned today to Rescue Company 1, searched Ground Zero for 8.5 months for Paul's son and their brother Gary, who was never found. Earlier this morning, Lieutenant Goodell told us of how surviving members of Rescue Company 1 saved one of their own. Upon hearing the cries for help from a fallen firefighter buried under tons of debris, this company worked as a team, essentially in relay fashion, for 22 hours to free their brother. They rescued him by tunneling with their hands through metal, debris, ash, and dirt, all while the rubble continued to smolder and burn around them, through a tunnel so small that a helmet could not be worn, and the dirt and debris could only be cleared away by scooting it out with their abdomens. And finally, the touching story told this morning at Fire Station 27 in Hollywood of 25 Los Angeles firefighters who traveled to New York City just a day or so after September 11th as volunteers to assist the Fire Department of New York in the normal daily duties of firefighting around a very busy New York City. Life continued, albeit different, in New York. They were there to assist with search and rescue efforts at Ground Zero and to just be on duty so that New York's firefighters could simply get some rest and see their families. Hearing these stories can only make one imagine how amazing the countless other stories of heroism created that day are. Stories that we have never heard. A person who makes the decision to defend our nation abroad as a member of the armed services is making a decision to risk their own life away from their own families and friends for our benefit. A person who signs up to defend our community here at home as a member of local law enforcement has decided to put their life on the line for our protection and well-being. A person that chooses to protect our homes, our property, and our lives as a firefighter or paramedic has decided to risk their own life to save ours. The brave men and women making these life choices are young. Many of them are right out of high school. Some are right out of college. Their entire adult lives are in front of them. Yet, the choice to benefit from the safety afforded us in this incredible nation is passed over by these young men and women for the choice to provide the safety that we all rely on every day, most days without even noticing. The fact that on most days we don't notice is a testament to what an amazing job they all do on our behalf. I am thankful that so many of the young adults in our country choose a career in public safety. Thank you to the September 11th Families Association for keeping the memories of your loved ones alive and for doing so much in their name. And to the Fire Department of New York and Los Angeles for your bravery. And thank you for this important reminder of how precious and how costly freedom and liberty are in this great nation.
Come and past, the innocent can never last. Wake me up when September ends. Like my father's come to pass, 13 years has gone so fast. Wake me up when September ends. Here comes the rain again, falling from the stars, drenched in my pain again, becoming who we are. As my memory rests, but never forgets what I lost. Wake me up when September Summer has come and passed, the innocent can never forget what we lost. Wake me up when September ends. Wake me up when September ends.
On the 10-year anniversary of 9/11, at a university event held at Bovard Auditorium, USC President C.L. Max Nikias reminded all of us not to forget the spirit of 9/12, even as we commemorate 9/11. For it was on 9/12 that we all came together as a nation and as a world, when we saw selfless and heroic deeds all around us, when ordinary people did extraordinary things, and when a spirit of unity and strength permeated the fabric of everyday life. So as we depart today, let us be animated and inspired by that courageous spirit of 9/12 and carry that spirit forward in our lives and in our work. This concludes our memorial installation ceremony today. Thank you again to all of our participants, the USC ROTC Color Guard, Jennifer Massey, John Thomas, Kevin James, Malia Savets, Jonathan Sim, and Danny Fahrenbach. A special thank you to the USC DPS cadets for all their hard work and selfless service today. And most of all, thank you to all of you for coming out this evening. Please take care of yourself, please take care of each other, and fight on. Thank you.